Hello and welcome to Pulse Social. This is a weekly podcast by Ryan Richardson and Jasmine West, who was our lovely guest. So, Jasmine, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. How are you doing, Ryan?
Great. I'm very well, thank you. Very good.
Amazing.
So, let's kick things off. Um, Tell me a bit about yourself. Talk about, what hobbies do you have, what interests do you have, stuff like that.
Hmm. So, a bit about me. I would say my main hobby overall would be singing. I'm quite a musical person. And I am looking to create content in the future related to my singing, and it's just some like a hobby that I've had since I was very young. In terms of sort of my singing style, it would probably be more like pop R&B, like a bit of soul. I've also done like some musical theatre, but I would absolutely love to produce and create my own music in the future. Like it's definitely on the cards. Other things about me is travel is a massive one. My family actually live in the Philippines. I am half Filipino. So I go over there quite regularly, at least twice a year to go visit them. And I've done other travel plans, like particularly over the past few years as well, like around Europe, which are amazing. And also like really into food, really into cooking. Like I'm a big
Hmm.
foodie. And I think for me, like a good time is good company and good food. Like that's like a really nice day out for me. So those tend to be the things that I do a lot or have done, I think, for the past few years.
Brilliant. That's great. So, we've got a singer and a foodie on hands here. So, let's talk about
Absolutely
your work.
like nothing to do like with the categories that we're going to talk about
Yeah, I
today.
know. I know, but it gives people context, so good. All right, so let's talk about your business, Westbrook Estates. Tell the people
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah, so I have my own property investment business, and that's its name, Westbrook Estates. It's based in London. And essentially, what it does is it provides short-term accommodation for contractors and professionals who need somewhere to stay when they're in the city. Another one of our key services is we also source lucrative property deals using a business model called rent to rent. And then we essentially package these up and get these ready to pass on to our clients and investors. So those are the two like core services which we offer.
Okay, nice, nice. So how did you sort of get into the property investing sector? How did you start that journey?
I think for me, I was at a point in my life when I was working full time and the job wasn't really the issue. I think for me, it was more like the lifestyle and the work-life balance, particularly because I want to be able to have more time to visit my family and also pursue other interests like the singing, for example. Um, I kind of wanted to look at ways to invest where they would be able to create a life where I'd essentially have more control and more freedom. So it was only last year when I was researching and looking and sort of going to free webinars online just to learn about different things to invest in. And I came across property. And I think I was just really sold on the kind of life that by investing in it I could build for myself and also um, the pros of it as well
Hmm.
as a type of asset. So after going to one of the webinars, I then signed up to another event. And then it was at that second event that I decided to then really invest to learn more about it in depth and take it seriously. So it was really from that point, it was May last year that I made that decision. But that was how I got into it. It was mainly just sort of through my own research and the internet really. Like I don't
Yeah,
have anyone like in my family or I don't at that time I didn't know anyone who was already in property who I talked to about it. Like I didn't have any knowledge really at all to begin with. So it was just
yeah.
through sort of doing some digging.
Nice, nice. So obviously you mentioned, sort of the reasons why you started your property business, mainly freedom, you know, freedom in terms of time, I think is
Mm,
probably the main one. So you can sort of spend more time traveling, doing your interests like singing, stuff like that.
mm,
Now obviously going from full-time work into creating something for yourself, that takes a lot of time and effort. So I
mhm.
wanna know what sort of challenges and adversities did you face during that transition and how did you overcome them?
I think the challenge is time is one of them, especially when you're working full time. That's a lot of hours out of your week already, that you're spending putting into that job essentially. And so I think that's a big one, being able to manage your time and like juggle both.
Yeah,
And I think in overcoming that, I mean, that's still something which I would say I'm looking to continuously improve on, is in be more efficient, learn how to make the most out of the time that I have. How can I do things faster? What are
yeah,
the actions that I need to take that will get me most of my results? So I think that's something which, yeah, I think is definitely a challenge for a lot of people. But yeah, to overcome it would be more planning, I would say, like really planning
yeah.
out your week. And I've spoken to other investors who have said the exact same thing. So planning out your week. And another tip that I saw was obviously, especially when it comes to business, like there are a lot of
Mm.
things that you could do. Like there are a lot of things related to branding that you could do. There's a lot of things related to marketing and like other aspects of it. But essentially, what you want to do when you're in that situation is you want to make money. So it's about, I
Yeah,
think, really honing in on like in that scenario, because I was still juggling the two. So and what I needed to do was be able to quit my job and go full time
hmm,
into business. Um, and I think what's really a really good skill to learn is really identifying the actions which are going to get you most of the results. So not
hmm.
every action that you could do is going to be as productive as others, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And I think once you've sort of identified those, and it makes it a lot easier and clearer, because then you know what it is that you need to do, and it's just a matter of I think it makes it more, yeah, it makes it easier.
yeah,
Another thing which I think for me, like I really struggled with in the beginning was um, I found the whole thing like slightly overwhelming at first because it wasn't an industry I had any knowledge about. If
mm,
you'd asked me the previous year if I had any plans to become an entrepreneur, I would have said no.
yeah,
So it was a very big jump. And I think for me, I've, and even now, like it's still something I'm working on. But I think one thing which really helped was really, really working on the mindset and like what your perspective is mentally. I feel like it's such a game changer just in life in general, but
yeah,
particularly for me, like when opened a business, I think I was just really holding myself back. Like in my head, I was sort of saying a lot of negative thoughts which weren't helping me and were making it harder to do the things that I needed to do in order to progress at first.
yeah,
And also, I'm just a big believer in like with anything, it always starts like in the mind. It always starts about what are you thinking? Like, what are you telling yourself? Because that's ultimately going to then impact and determine your actions.
hmm,
So, like that during that time, like I was just kind of telling myself, like, oh, I don't really know if I'm an entrepreneur. Like, oh, I don't really think like I see myself that way. Um,
hmm,
but if people talk to me about it, like I would say that I'm committed. I would say like this is what I've chosen to do, and I kind of know that. But I would be creating like more blockers like in my mind by telling myself these things. And once I change that, again, it just makes it so much easier. And sometimes that didn't necessarily mean like waiting until I felt like I was thinking the right things. It meant still doing what I needed to do, even though I was still thinking like those same things in my head, if that makes
yeah,
sense. You
yeah,
know, like sometimes it's, even though it's like I stand by what I said, that mindset is important. It's about also like I think still being able to be reasonable and think, okay, well, even if I don't think this still needs to get done at the end of the day. And you
yeah,
have to sort of push through and override yourself, if that makes sense. which is can be like really hard. But so I think for me, like those would be the main two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think they're not quick fixes really to either of them. Like they require consistency, they require sort of a lot of work regularly to be able to
Yeah,
make progress. But again, I just think it's really worth it. Like they're really valuable skills and mindset, especially. I think it's worth working on mindset, like whenever, for how long, I think I'm a big self-improvement person where I'm always trying to sort of see how I can level up and
yeah,
mindset when I realized the importance of it for me. It was just a game changer. And even now, I still really enjoy learning about it and doing that kind of stuff.
yeah. No, that's I mean, the mindset point really resonates with someone like me who comes from a sporting background, and I really like the word consistency that you use because
Mm,
that is literally the most important thing you can do in any, whether it's building a brand, focusing on yourself, building yourself up. As long as you maintain the consistency, results will eventually come, and that's the main
mm,
thing. So yeah, that was really good, really insightful. Um, so let's move on to your background in sports. So I know you're an avid sportswoman. You
mm.
have a big enthusiasm for sports. So talk to me about your history in sports, what sports you're doing now, and also what sort of sports you want to do in the future.
Yeah. It's funny you say that actually, like because I feel like I've never really considered or like labeled myself a sporty person, but I
Yeah,
think exercise and sort of health and well-being for sure have always been, or like what it feels like now, probably for the last like 15 years, have definitely been like high priorities for me and something that I've been very interested in. Um, so in the past, like outside of, the mandatory PE that you'd have to do in school, I
mm,
did more, I think growing up, I did more sort of creative forms of exercise, like dance
yeah,
being the main one. I used to do ballet and like when you would be in primary school or in secondary school and they would get like a teacher to come in and give sort of like regular classes for like a term,
yeah,
like before school started. Yeah, I used to do those. So like street dance was one of them, and I think I did a few others.
mm,
So I used to do yeah, like different forms of dance. Um, During uni, I was sort of in and out of the gym. I think with university, I did really want to do more sports, but I didn't. And I think this probably links into what we're going to talk about later. Um, but yeah, so I was really keen to join like some societies, like particularly with like martial arts, like I was quite interested in. But it didn't go through in the end because like there were so many membership tiers and in the
yeah,
end it just ended up being more expensive than I could afford at the time. And
mm,
because I didn't anticipate that you'd need a membership for just for the uni, then you need a membership to do that sport, then you need to like pay membership fee to the society, then you need to buy your uniform or whatever it is.
yeah,
And it's and like as much as I wanted to, like I couldn't then. Um,
mm,
but I did make use of the gym facilities, but even then I don't really think I planned my workouts very well, like looking back. And like I said, I don't think I was as consistent.
mm,
um More recently, when before I moved to London, when I lived in Leeds, I did hip workouts for a year, and that was at this gym. It was really good, and it before joining, like I'd never done a hip workout before. It was really tested me. And I think that's also why it was good because I can look back and it feels like an achievement to sort of have done it for that longer period of time.
yeah,
Considering that the first ever class that I went to, um, the way they like split up the classes in different zones, and the first one is a treadmill. And then once you've done that, then you move on to like weighted exercises. And then the
mm,
third zone is like on a stationary air bike. So it's like two cardio and like one strength, and the different times for each zone would vary. I think the first class I joined, it was like 9 minutes in each zone in the first round.
Oh,
And that,
yeah.
and literally like 7, 8 minutes in on the first zone, which was a treadmill, like I almost passed out. Like I, like I
Yeah.
barely made it. I think if it wasn't for like that second wind of adrenaline, like I wouldn't have made it through the class. But and that's a normal response, can I just say?
Yeah.
Like I talked to the
Yeah.
manager after and she was saying like, "Oh, how did you find it?" And I was like, "Oh, it was like really hard like in the beginning, like I almost passed out, blah blah blah." And she was saying, "Oh yeah, when I did my first class like 5 years ago and I was getting interviewed, um like I threw up after and then I just had to go to the interview and like pretend that it didn't happen." And like that's like a normal thing. Like it's meant to be it really tests you.
Yeah.
But like over time, like when you stick with it, it's really it that's what I mean. I think there's a real satisfaction that you get from it. And knowing when you actually get to a point where you're kind of more comfortable with the exercises and you can like up the speed on the treadmill, you can up the weights, or you can like do more sprints like on the bike and that kind of stuff. So I think in terms of progress, that was really good. And sort of the feel of it as well. They would make it really dramatic. So they'd like dim the lights and they would always put like really sort of like bass heavy music on. And like they do like all of these like it was almost like club lights like throughout the class. So I think the atmosphere they created like also really helped.
Yeah.
Um and another exercise, I can't say I do this regularly, but I do sort of do a class when I'm home, is when
Hmm.
I'm in the Philippines. Um, a really popular sport there is Zumba, like Zumba dance.
Yeah.
And it would be like in person. And I don't know why, it's just really popped off there for some reason. Like
Yeah.
people love it, like doing it in the neighborhoods. And my mum is really into it. And it's like a really social thing as well
Mm.
because it's so popular. So I do that as like a form of cardio. Um, Again, I think the only challenge of that though is because it's so hot. It's like 30 plus degrees.
Yeah.
And doing it outside where there's no aircon, so it can get
Yeah.
kind of tiring. But again, I think maybe it balances out because you feel good because you sweat more. I know that doesn't really have anything to do with like the results, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I feel like
It's
when
a yeah. Makes you feel like you're working hard.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, so I think like in terms of the past, it's been like a mixing pot of things.
Yeah.
Um, I think at the moment what I'm doing is I'm just going to my local gym really, and they offer classes too, so I'm sort of experimenting with those because they offer quite a variety, including some that I haven't done before. But I'm doing more low impact exercise at the moment. I
Hmm.
think with the hit, as much as I liked it, I think I'm not really sure if hormonally it was good for me, like on like a long-term basis, which is why I'm kind of
Yeah.
doing more low impact stuff. And also, I think what I noticed when I did hit is because it was so intense. I felt like there were days where it would sort of impact my energy levels, and I
Hmm.
would feel like a bit of a dip. Whereas which I think also made it hard to sort of continue and be sustainable sometimes.
Yeah.
Whereas now, what I'm really trying to my main goal is to basically more to get into the habit of moving and exercising. So even if I'm not like outside of the gym, like I really try to walk a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't own a car anyway, but like rather than take the bus somewhere, like if I can walk it, then I'll do that. And just, even when like carrying like heavy bags of groceries and walking, there's a name
Yeah.
for it, but I can't remember. But you know what I mean? It's more like
Yeah.
incorporating movement instead of just sort of sticking to like dedicating an hour a day of exercise, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean, I have been going regularly anyway. Like the minimum that I'll do is I'll really try to get my step count up, or I'll do like incline walking for like 30 minutes. 30 minutes minimum, but more recently I've been doing like at least an hour. That's like the absolute bare minimum that I'll do, and I'll do that like every day.
Mm.
And but yeah, it's more that. I've been doing like other. kinds of exercises as well, like yoga, like or Pilates, or like also prioritizing like stretching, mobility as well.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, but yeah, I think I'm definitely not against doing like higher impact stuff in the future. I think what I don't want to do is what I've done before is I've basically put the bar too high and made it so it's not easy to stick to, or that it's too difficult to stick to.
Yeah.
And said, oh, I'm gonna do like an hour of this and I'll do this, and then I don't stick with it. And then ultimately it's pointless because of, we were saying it's consistency at the end of the day,
Yeah.
which is going to get you the results. So I just want to really focus on ingraining like that habit in. Um, so I think that's mainly what I'm doing like at the moment. In the future though, there are quite a few different sports that I'd be open to trying. And paddleball like is one of them, mostly just because
Hmm.
I'm curious. I have absolutely no idea like how to play it. I've not into it whatsoever. I've just seen a lot of people mention it and say that it's like an easier way to play tennis.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued. And martial arts as well. I wouldn't mind going back to like a form of martial arts. I think it'd be quite fun. And
Mm.
also they seem handy, like for self-defense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Definitely.
yeah. And also badminton. Badminton I've enjoyed playing in the past. Um, or any kind of sport really where I think there's more of a social element rather than being like an individual sport. I
Hmm.
think that would be fun. But badminton in particular, like I do quite enjoy.
Yeah.
And also other types of dance. So I actually wouldn't mind going back to dance. Like I went to
Mm.
a dance class actually in London like a few months ago, not long after I moved. And it was really fun. It was like to house music, which I didn't even really know that there was like dance moves for, but it was really
Yeah.
fun. And again, I think with dance as well, I see that as handy because like I feel like being able to dance well is like a really cool skill to have, like if someone can dance well.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't even have to be like anything complicated, but I think just being able to sort of like dance to a rhythm and like groove a little bit is
Mm.
like it's like a cool thing to do because I do feel like when you go to parties and that kind of thing, it can be a little bit awkward because nobody really dances
Yeah.
anymore. Um,
Yeah. That's true. That is very true.
but so yeah, I think like quite a mix overall, like looking back and even now and in the future. But I think there are just so many ways like to exercise and stuff. So I think
Yeah.
it's good to try as many of them as you can.
Yeah. Definitely. I think I really like the the club or like social aspect of it. So
Mm,
one of the challenges that I personally face is like because I live in just outside of London and I have to travel all the way to East London just to train with my club sort of thing. So most of the time I'm actually training by myself. Um,
mm,
and the the amount that I find it so much harder to train when it's just you because you lack the motivation. Some days you just don't want to do it. But I find it so much harder to sort of just get any exercise done on my own rather
yeah,
than when I'm at the club and I'm with good people, good vibes, we're all encouraging each other. So I think that finding like a good group of people to partake in sport with, I think that's really key if someone's looking to introduce sport into their life. I think just having the right people around you, naturally you'll just start to sort of like it and then want to go more and more and more. Um, so yeah, that was really good. Really good insight into your sporting life. Really nice. So now obviously you talk about your past in dance and the hit workouts and all that sort of stuff, and the challenges that you face, especially in the hit classes when you go to your first session and you're dead within 10 minutes,
mm,
sort of thing. So I just want to know what sort of skills or attributes do you think doing these sports, whether it's like the resilience, the discipline, the consistency that we talked about earlier, what attributes do you think doing these sports, um, and how has that helped you in your work life or even just in general, just day-to-day life now?
Yeah, so I think for me, the first one that springs to mind would definitely be related to mental health and mindset. Um, and I also think whenever I exercise, that's sort of like the first benefit that I feel, if that makes sense. It's kind of like
Yeah,
when you do it, um, you're like, oh, I feel so much better, you know? It's sort of like you
yeah,
get like a release from it. Um, and especially because I'm quite conscious that for me, I spend a lot of the day sedentary, and a majority of people this day and age, I think, like do as well in terms of like
mm,
what they do for the day, or like their what their job is like. So I think it's always really important to, like get up, be active, like improve your circulation, like sweat as well. For me,
mm,
I really feel, I think it's really a good feeling, especially when in the colder months, like to be able to
yeah,
sort of sweat out a bit more. And like, I don't know what it is. I feel like it really does help me like get sick less often as well by
yeah,
doing that. Um, and also with regards like to the mindset, I think it's um doing like hard workouts in particular, like the hip, for example. It was really good for pushing me out of my comfort zone and a way like getting used to doing hard things. That's something which I'm working on a lot, and have been recently for quite some time now, is like actively looking for opportunities to push myself out of my comfort zone, because it's the best way to grow. Like that's how you're
yeah,
ultimately going to improve yourself the most, is by doing the things that you don't want to do. And for a lot of successful people, like when I listen to podcasts and I've read about it, the reason why they are where they are is because they've been able to train themselves to do uncomfortable things, even if they don't feel like it, because they know that it's going to lead to growth, or it's going to lead to progress, or it's going to help them
mm,
get to where they want to be. And that's the thing, like it's hard because in your mind you're thinking that it's hard and you don't know what to, and you don't know, you don't really want to do it.
yeah,
So, but I think, even exercise, just by pushing yourself, by doing that last rep, like when you're absolutely dying, or like, like to get to right to the end of like the timer for when like you need to stop, and like it's really good for helping you do that,
mm,
and I do think even though that's just in one area of your life, like it makes it easier to sort of transfer it to others. I think
mm,
I'm definitely believe in sort of the saying that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So even if you're just sort of applying that skill in one area of your life, just by doing that, you're like massively improving your chances of sort of that being how you approach things in all areas of your life, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, like mental clarity and focus as well. I really like. I feel like, especially like with cardio, um, or even just walking around, like in general, like just going for a walk, like it's just a really nice way to sort of calm down a little bit and like get some space between your
yeah,
thoughts and what you have to do and other things. Like you can get like a lot of clarity, I think, from doing that. Um, and again, I think for me, like it really helps. I do have the personality type where I like to have time to myself, just to sort of recharge and re-energize. So that's another thing which I think I've really noticed. And for skills, I do think you can learn a lot of important and transferable skills from sport. Um, the discipline for sure, like again, like getting into that habit of doing things even when you don't feel like doing them on the day. Um, Also teamwork, communication, like especially for sports where you are working in a team,
mm,
or with other people. And again, like this idea of prioritizing progress and consistency over sort of what you're able to do, um, in the session, and having this sort of long-term goal that you're always focusing on. I think that's a really, really good perspective to develop as well. Um, I think for me, like even when I was sort of getting into sports where originally I didn't like them, like for the running, for example, like when I was doing HIIT, um, I did really enjoy sort of like learning about different sort of specific techniques that you can do, like to help improve performance and that kind of thing. And again, I think it links to this sort of idea of you always sort of want to get better at it. So
Mm.
you always have this long-term goal in mind. Like even if, like your goal for next week is just to do like like bench 5 kilograms more, or whatever it is, like it kind of never stops. Like you're always gonna sort of want to aim for the next thing. And
Yeah,
I quite like that personally, the idea of sort of that constant. Um, and again, I think for me as well, I don't really ever imagine myself like stop aiming for other things. So
mm,
whenever, even if I have a goal, once I get it, I'm going to want to move on to something else. So I think just that framework and that perspective, it really aligns with my own perspective as well.
nice, nice. Okay. All right. One thing I do want to know your opinion on, is what do you think more companies, media outlets, uh,
Mm-hmm.
just people in general, what do you think that they should start doing more that would help women actually start partaking in sport?
Hmm. So do you mean like just what other companies are you thinking of when apart from media?
So, so in terms, let's talk about professionally, let's say.
Yeah.
So obviously, good examples like football. So obviously,
Mm-hmm.
women's football, ever since what was it, the Euros, I believe it was, has
Yeah.
it's really started to take a jump. But obviously, there's always room to improve, and obviously, football's not the only sort of sport. Not everyone
Mm-hmm.
likes football. So it's sort of like in a sense of say, so you worked before full time, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what going back to that time period, what would you have liked to seen more of that company do to sort of allow you the opportunity to do sport, whether it's, dedicated days to it,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's you know, whether they bring people in to
Yeah.
help you do sport. Because, one of the main benefits of sport, I believe, is the the sort of stress relief of it. Because
Mm-hmm.
every time I do sport, I'm there training, and that's what I'm focused on, and I don't have to worry about you know work, uni, all these sort of other outside things. I'm literally just tunnel visioned on this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that there's a lot of people out there that are working full time and have all this stress on them,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, financially, time constraints, all this sort of thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think just introducing sport into someone's life who's feeling like that would
Mm-hmm.
genuinely do so much, both physically, but more importantly, their mental side of things.
For
So,
sure.
um, yeah, what do you think, you know, more people should start doing more specifically to get women into sport?
Mm-hmm. I think there's still a very big narrative around particular sports not being feminine. And I do think that puts a lot of women off. Like even now, um, you see a lot of like women on social media who are kind of scared to do certain sports because they're afraid they're gonna look bulky, they're afraid they're gonna like feel like they're like not feminine,
Mm,
or feel like I think probably they will be perceived as not feminine. And like I think now we're very much in, well, we're in a more inclusive age, and I don't think that fear should be holding women back. But the reason I think they feel that, or a big factor, I think, is because of the media and the kind of images that it perpetrates surrounding masculinity and femininity. Um, but equally, we live in an age where people really value and are very vocal on media platforms, or the
Yeah.
internet about representation. Um, but I still feel like there's the fact that so many women are kind of showing that fear. I think it means that there's still more work to be done, basically. Um, I mean, as well, like every individual like is so different. So I
Mm.
think that does make me think that with regards to broadening representation, that there is still more that we should continue doing, like in that space, so that women feel like um or can feel the confidence, I think, to do certain
Yeah.
or other sports. I think that's what it is. Like it probably when they feel that fear, like they don't want to they don't want to feel or they can't feel confident like going into it.
Mm.
I think with regards to workplaces, I definitely feel like um well, like with my work, for example, I know with other works they provide like discounted gym memberships and that kind of
Mm.
thing, like which is great. But again, I think it's also about reiterating the message just more regularly, um, throughout sort of the working day, or like embedding it more into the work culture of that company, with regards to the importance of health and fitness and also physical health, especially for these companies like mine was, where everyone is pretty much sedentary.
Mm.
And I think they do this in some countries, maybe like South Korea and Japan, where um, like I remember I was on I think it was a Korean airline, and like they played like a little video to help passengers like stretch and that kind of thing and
Oh
get the
yeah.
blood flowing. And it feels a bit like when you come from a place where that's just not normal, like you feel a bit like strange, but I also think it's a very sensible thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's doing things like that. I think it's doing things like maybe one thing they could do is like average working day is 8 hours, or for most people it's actually like a lot more, but standardly it's 8 hours. And like more sort of breaks like throughout the day to break it up, like so maybe some kind of prompt to kind of encourage people to step away from their screens for a little bit, like even if it's just for 5 minutes, just sort of
Mm.
do a few stretches, like stretch out your body, like get rid of the stiffness. And also, I think what you were saying about the importance of community and it being a social thing to encourage people is very, very true.
Mm.
Um, so changes within like the actual environment, like I don't know if maybe I know some places now they want people, or it is policy for everyone to come to the office every day and less people sort of allowed to work from home. So I think in those instances there should be like a maybe one thing they could do is encourage people to go out for walks like during lunchtime, and that be sort of organized by like the office staff or someone within the company. But again, I think it's like the reason doing it that, because obviously anyone could go for a walk during their lunch break if they
Yeah.
wanted to, but I think again it's the importance of, by creating a social aspect within it, or by creating like a group to incentivize people, I think they're more likely to do it
Yeah.
compared to if they're just relying on their own like individual willpower, basically. Um, so yeah, I think with regards to sort of like companies and like the media, those would be like my takes on it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think especially the whole stigma with
Mhm.
women doing sports and them not feeling feminine. I think that's a really big one. Um, because I mean, sports for everyone, like whether no matter what sport you do, is literally if you like it, if you're finding a benefit out of it, you shouldn't have the need to worry about what X, Y, and Z are thinking. But sadly,
Yeah,
that does still happen in that today's society. But I do believe we're moving in the right foot, which is very good.
yeah,
Um,
me as well.
yeah. So finally, final question.
Mhm.
Um, I want you to give some advice to whoever's listening, if there's a woman out there that is really wanting to start sport but hasn't made that sort of leap yet into
Mhm.
to actually starting it. What advice would you give them?
I think, um, yeah, I think when it comes to that, where you have the desire to do a sport or to exercise and you're having trouble actually doing it, is if you're scared for whatever reason, whether that be because it's your first time going into a gym or it's your first time doing that particular sport or doing that particular class, is just to do it scared, is to not sort of expect or wait for you to feel like you feel like doing it more or you feel more comfortable about it, is just to do it still, but just do it scared. Um, and as well, um, if I think they're hesitant because they're not really sure like what kind of sport to do, for example, is again just to, rather than trying to find the perfect one where it feels like it ticks every single one of the boxes, is just to be have more fun with it and to be more experimental. There are so many ways to exercise. And even, like on the internet, like there are so many bloggers and
Mm,
people that have made a career out of creating workouts and that kind of thing. Like there are so many options if you kind of choose to recognize them. Um, and so like even if you can't afford a gym membership, I would definitely say that YouTube is like a very, very good shout.
mm,
And just to, yeah, just experiment. I think for me, what held me back from doing a lot of things was wanting to sort of get it right first time and like find the perfect thing all the time. Whereas you'll only be able to sort of know what you like by trying different things. And to do that, you have to
yeah,
be prepared to kind of sort of try something and think, okay, well, I didn't mind that, but it was okay. I don't really know if I want to do that again, and sort of go through the motions with it a little bit.
mm,
And also to not really, um, if there are any women who feel like they lack self-confidence, again for any maybe any of the reasons that I've mentioned, is again to just push through and do it. I listened to a
mhm,
podcast recently. Um, I can't remember who it was by now, but they were basically saying that when you get thoughts in your head, whether it be doubts, whether it be a kind of limiting belief saying that you can't do something or you shouldn't do something, is even though they're in your own head, they're not you.
mm,
And it's important to be able to sort of push through anyway, and to not let those doubts inside you hold you back. And I also think that a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking that other people are paying attention to them more than they are. If that makes sense.
yeah,
Like I've kind of felt that way going into the gym, like feeling like, oh, are people going to sort of look at me and tell that I don't know how to use this machine or that I don't know what I'm doing and that I'm just making it all up like as I go along? And the answer is no. And it doesn't
mm,
really matter what it is. Like nobody's looking at you, like as much as you're sort of over analyzing yourself, like nobody's thinking the negative thoughts that you're assuming that they're thinking about you, like if that makes sense. Like so
yeah,
a lot of people are way too wrapped up in their own heads to be thinking all of the things that you're assuming and telling yourself. So I think if that's something that is holding any woman back from going because they're afraid of other people's judgment, again, just I would say just to sort of almost like rebel against yourself and like do it anyway.
yeah. Right. That was really good. That was was really insightful. I really enjoyed that. Thank you
Oh, I'm
so
glad.
much for coming on, Jasmine. Hope you
No
enjoyed
worries.
it.
I
Um,
did. It was really interesting. Really good
it was
questions.
good. Good, no worries, thank you. Um, so if people want to sort of keep up with your journey and
Mm.
property investment, where can they find you? So like your Instagram handle, Twitter handle, all this sort of stuff.
So my main one is on Instagram. So if you do want to keep up with me, then my Instagram handle is at property with Jasmine, and then you can see what I'm up to.
Perfect. So that's property with Jasmine. Make sure to go follow. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a great week and we will see you soon. Bye.